Shadow work is such a hot topic. It's a juicy topic. And the words shadow work just evoke some kind of feeling in us. And it's mysterious, it's curious, and it's a need to do thing for every single person out there. That's what we're talking about. What is shadow work and how to do it on today's episode of Expedition to Soul. We know that you were born magical. We know that you are intuitive, and we know that you are brimming with everyday enchantment. Here at the Sisters Enchanted, we believe in intention, we believe in intuition, and we believe in everyday magic. Welcome in to the Expedition to Soul podcast. Hey everyone, Sara here, founder of the Sisters Enchanted, and we are celebrating Open House Week for our Holistic Witchery program, and we're doing some workshops too. And this, what is shadow work and how to do it? It's a little chunk, a little replay of one of the open house workshops that we've hosted recently to celebrate the doors and the newly revamped curriculum for Holistic Witchery. I want you to listen in, grab a pen and paper, because you're even going to do a little bit of shadow work on the spot. So I'm going to go ahead, put this in here, or someone's going to put it in here, and listen in about what is shadow work and how to do it, and enjoy. Shadow work. Stop. It's shadow time. I need like a version of that song, the MC Hammer song. Stop. It's shadow time. Let's get to it. What is shadow work? So shadow work, and the way that we talk about it here at the Sisters Enchanted, the way that we teach it here, is kind of a meeting of the ideas of Carl Jung and Ivan Illich. So Carl Jung is a super famous psychologist, and he talked about the shadow self being the repressed, denied parts of self. So the things you don't, the stories you don't come face to face with within yourself, the energies you deny, like that's not how I am. You know, we repress it down, and the repressed like stories and memories of our lives also, which amplify and lead to these ways of being. Now, Ivan Illich, he was a lot of things. He was a sociologist, philosopher, theologian, like he's one of those guys who just wore many hats depending on how his beliefs shifted over the years. But one of the things he did write was a book actually called Shadow Work. And now his idea of shadow work, it's really the jobs we do that we don't get paid to do. And what happens is when we're doing all of these jobs that we don't get paid to do, we are filling our time with things that rob us of opportunities for joy, relaxation, and just being our most authentic selves. And many of these jobs that we do that we don't get paid to do are centered around how we appear in society. So like, what are the great lengths we go to make sure that we look a certain way, our house looks a certain way, or like we are the best of the best caretaker to some person, or, you know, the 1 hour commute to work each way that you do to have the job that you like, the right job, you know, or this might be a gut punch for some people, but a great example of this, in my previous career, I used to work with a family where both parents commuted an hour minimum to work because they had great paying jobs and they had a very big house and expensive everything. And to maintain that, their jobs were so far away that they were spending like all of this time a week in a commute, right? Where they could have had a smaller house, a different lifestyle, and not spent that time commuting to work. So those are those unpaid, that's like that unpaid work that you're doing in your life to, though, fit into society in a certain way. But we do that often to avoid the feelings that would come up, like if we didn't do those things. Like what would it feel like to just say no? Or what would it feel like to not perfectly manicure your yard, or like pack a gourmet lunch, or, like whatever stage you are in life where you're doing things. So that's what shadow work is. The denied, repressed parts of self that we're starting to look at, but also what are we doing to fill our time in order to avoid the discomfort that comes with actually asking these questions. So it's a twofold thing here. We're ignoring parts of ourselves, parts of our story. We're like not accepting them as wholeness of part of who we are, or we think that they're bad. And then also, what are we doing with our time in the name of something you have to do, quote unquote, to avoid spending time in that discomfort? And it just robs us of our joy. Shadow work is also about bringing all parts of you back to yourself. So there is this, feeling of like that there's bad qualities of us, that the feelings you have are bad, or you shouldn't have them, or like this story is a bad story, or you're a bad person because, or you'd only be better if, like, if only you did this thing, you'd be better. All of these parts are those, like, you're in not accepting them and their wholeness as part of you, part of your story, part of how you are who you are today, the strength of your story, the hero of your story. That's denying them, just saying like, no, that's not good. That's not a good piece of me. I don't want to look at that. That's not a good quality. That is denying parts of yourself. And when you deny parts of yourself, just like Peter Pan's shadow, that's always floating around somewhere. And when you go get it, you bring it back and sew it back on. That's when you become whole again and you become more true to yourself. You're better able to hear yourself. You're more authentic, more trusting in who you are. So the question, just like a little shadow work to get us started, what are you filling your time with to avoid the shadow? That is a great question for all of us to ask. When I think about my own life, I can answer that question on a marriage level, a parenting level, a work level, a personal level, a food level, a fitness level. I can answer that question on so many levels. What are you filling your time with to avoid the shadow? It's a great first question to ask of yourself. So some myths about shadow work, some things that we might think about it that aren't quite true, or just some kind of writing our thought process. Shadow work is not for processing the past. So I will often see people who are like, oh, I have this childhood trauma or this thing that happened and I need to do shadow work to process it. That's not what shadow work is about. That's what therapy is for. Processing is for other things. And you can process, just with your own thoughts and exercise, like that's all processing. However you want to process it's fine by me. But shadow work is not for processing the past. It's not for like reliving, rehashing, going through every word that occurred. That's not what shadow work is about. There's also not one single method or right way to do shadow work. So there's not like an instruction manual or follow these steps. I mean, we're going to do some steps, and I'm sure like so many other people have steps, but there's not a right way to do it. Doing shadow work, that question I asked you on the last slide, what are you spending your time on to avoid shadow right now? Like that's shadow work, just answering that question. So it can be that quick and easy. Doesn't have to be a long drawn out process. You don't need to spend a whole Saturday afternoon like wondering why you are the way you are. Doesn't have to be like that. And it can be done before, during, or after an experience. So one thing that we did during our Magic Week program, if anybody participated in that, is I presented an activity where I said, like, we're actually going to do shadow work in advance. We're going to look at something we want to do, and we're going to do shadow work about it before it even happens. So we can do shadow work before. We can, in a moment that we feel like we are in a situation where we start to feel like our blood pressure increase, our emotions heighten, our just general state heighten, we can do some shadow work then. And then if, we get the best of ourselves and we feel like we've been taken over by jealousy, guilt, resentment, blame, shame, whatever it is, we can do shadow work after as well. So it can happen anytime during your lived experience. But shadow work, really, as I said, it's not about processing the past. It's about coming to a neutral point and knowing also that your truth is not the only truth. So that's one of the things that we are going to talk about here a little bit, is that it's about your perception, and your perception is not the only perception. And that's part of shadow work as well. It's actually a side note. This came up in our most recent small group mastermind that we host, a question about people who want to be service providers for other people, like be guides or intuitives or readers or coaches. And this idea of like bettering yourself before you help somebody else. And this is one of the things that we talked about, was it's not about being like better in yourself. It's about knowing, like coming to neutrality within yourself and knowing that your truth isn't the only one, so that you're not projecting your stuff onto other people all the time. So shadow work helps with all of that. All right, let's do this. We're actually going to do some shadow work. So you can see it live here right now in your own life. So either in your mind or on a piece of paper, list out a few occasions in the last few days. Last week is what I wrote down, but last few days, last week, just a few. Don't go beating yourself up, but sometime when maybe you felt blame, shame, guilt, fear, resentment, or jealousy. Blame, shame, guilt, fear, resentment, or jealousy are the ones we're working with today. There's lots of other shadow feelings, but that's what I got. Excuse me. So some ideas about the last week or so when maybe you felt one of these things: blame, shame, guilt, fear, resentment, jealousy. I'm going to try to think of one too as an example to use. An exemplar, as Anna and I like to say. I had a college professor who always said that. And it always just stuck to me. An exemplar. All right, I've got my example. So all of these feelings that we have, they come from our thoughts and our experiences, our lived thoughts and experiences. We don't just start feeling these things, right? We feel these things because of our thoughts about them. So if you didn't know, if you were at a truly neutral point or just walked on the earth today, you wouldn't know what jealousy feels like, because you don't know that there are people who have things that you don't have, that you think you should have, or you don't understand why they can't have it, right? So if you were truly neutral or you just walked on this earth today, you wouldn't know what that felt like. All of these feelings come to be because we have thoughts and experiences about them that tell us something. Like shame, guilt. Guilt was the one I wrote down. And we have guilt because we feel like there would be a different way. We feel like there should be some other thing that we're doing, right? So it's our experiences and our thoughts that actually create this for us. So when we're doing this shadow work, if you pick one, if you pick one of these right now to work with, I have guilt. So in my example this week, specifically yesterday, and I will say it's a testament to how this really works, because I actually really not struggled, but it took me a minute to pick one. And I'm even a little bit of a stretch here, because believe me, I still feel these things, but I'm out of it so quickly because of the things that we teach here, that it just doesn't get to me like it used to. So my example here is guilt. Now there's a little stick figure sort of thing in the middle, and I will have you know that I built that myself with lines and circles using Google Slides, and I was really proud of that little stick figure. That's me right now. That's me in the center feeling guilty, right? And as I said before, these things that we experience, they come from a version of what we think it should look like, right? They come from, impatience, that's a good one. They come from a version of how we think things should be. So in a past story here, this is where we dig into the past. Now remember, it's not about processing the past. It's about understanding where the story comes from you. So my guilt yesterday I felt guilt around my whole family just seemingly being very dysregulated. I'm in this place right now with my grandparents, my husband, my kids. My kids are just dysregulated and off the wall. My husband was just very frustrated as a result. My grandmother is going through some things. And so her, and the kids were sort of not helping with that. And so I felt a lot of guilt as the person, the glue, I'm the glue that holds the family together. And I am focused on other things, and I'm not helping everybody else feel more regulated and doing my part to control all of this, right? So I look at past stories. Where is this coming from? Where have I somehow formed this idea that I need to do those things or else I feel guilty? And I can look at my own childhood and know what it was like to be a kid in a dysregulated life. And that makes me not want that for my kids, right? So that's a past story. I can obviously look to society, who tells me what a good mom looks like. And then that's part of my story. So I can look though and say, actually, this is all external stuff telling me about how things should be, or a perceived way of being, that is now turning into guilt for me. When the reality is, this is a temporary reality. It's temporary that I am this busy. It's temporary that everybody's going to be in this headache. And honestly, I'm not the only adult here. So it's not my responsibility to regulate everybody at the end of the day. But in order to do that shadow work and get out from under that guilt, because guilt can be so crippling, and to get out from underneath it, I have to look to the past stories that are informing the way I feel right now. Because the way I feel right now is creating my future story. So if I stay in the feeling of guilt, what am I doing that's creating the future? Am I telling all the other grown-ups, all the other adults that don't worry because I'm guilty, I'll take over, I'll fix it, don't worry about it for the future, and just perpetuating the problems? Am I like, because my kids were part of it, so am I just like feeding them with candy and iPads to hold them over, causing a more disruptive future, and they're not learning how to regulate themselves, right? So we look at this, for me, this is my personal example. I look at this guilt and I have to know, where is it coming from, so that I can take my shadow bits and say, these are all these uncomfortable feelings, understand them, and cast the future that I want to create, rather than creating more of a future that's going to cause more guilt. So I see someone's coming through here, like fear, resentment. I've been in resentment for sure. Anybody who's been here for we're almost 7 years old at Sisters Enchanted. If you've been here probably like the last year, it's been less because what we teach works. But the first 6 years, you definitely heard me share some resentment stories about my husband and my marriage. And I can look to that and again, look at these past stories and ask, what is making me feel resentful? Like, where is this coming from? Is it a past story, an expectation that I carry? Like that I expect this person to be a certain way, that I expected life should have been this way. I can look at that with my parents. My parents were, they were definitely interesting beings to have as parents. I can look at that with my dad, who has a second marriage, has most of my life, has 3 other kids outside of Anna and I, who he's like really present for. He's a great dad to them and a great grandfather to his grandkids with those kids. Anna and I don't know him that way. And my kids like don't even know who he is. I mean, they've met him, but they haven't seen him in years, so they wouldn't know him on the street. And I can feel that resentment, right? So then I want to look at the past stories and say, well, where is this coming from? Coming from some expectation, or coming from some feeling like expectation, how things should have been, coming from how other people had it, or like, well, why are they better than I am, or something like that, right? But these are all stories. Now, one of the things about shadow work that you can do is understand your perception of the situation. And remember that your perception is just one perception of the situation. So there are other perceptions at play, other people who are doing the best that they can, society trying to like keep everybody moving in one direction. Like there's a lot of things at play and a lot of other perceptions that aren't yours. So when we look at the past and we say, this is the past, this is my present and how I'm feeling, and is how I'm feeling right now creating the future that I want to have, or is it creating more of that past? So if you even think of yourself right now, like, I don't know, pick an arm, left or right, which one for you is future, which one's past, but just think of energy flowing through your body. And if you're receiving energy on one side and it's this past stories that are creating an emotion you're feeling right now, or a thought in your body right now, it's coming out the other arm and it's creating that same future. And that's why we do shadow work, to say this bit, it has done something for me. It made me, this past story, who I am today, but it doesn't have to dictate my future story. I can write a new future story right here in this moment. And that's what shadow work is. It's understanding, this is part of me that I feel this way. What's true about the story? What's a different perception? How can I integrate this new truth and cast a different future? Shadow work is as easy as that. And again, we can do this before a situation. If you know you're going to walk into a situation that's going to cause a lot of resentment, a lot of fear, a lot of guilt, a lot of blame, a lot of shame, do this before. If in a moment you're able to pause and kind of have this dialogue with yourself, do it right in a moment. And if everything gets the best of you and you yell at someone, you shout at someone, you cry, you shut down, whatever your thing is, you do it after. But that's what shadow work is. Taking all of these stories, just coming to neutral and saying, what is the future that I'm telling by living in this shadow feeling right now? And it's that quick. Let's see here. Dana says, I can quickly leave my shadow stuff, knowing the, I think there's a typo there, but guilt and fear. Catherine, guilt for not taking better care of my parents who live 4 hours away. Yeah, like you're not alone in that, Catherine, for sure. That is a common thing. And so it's really just understanding, the stories that are leading to the feeling of guilt. Because, and we experienced this with my grandparents as well. You know, my grandparents lived 12 hours from us and they never wanted to move. That was their choice though. Like I couldn't make them move, right? Like that was their choice at the end of the day. And so we have to remember these things about our stories, Let's see. Audrey sharing, getting ready for spring soccer for all three of my kids. Feel the guilt already because I had to miss more than a few games due to work last season. Looking about the same this season. Yeah. And that's that expectation though, that to be their best cheerleader, that you have to be there, which is entirely not true. Like to be the best parent, you have to be at all the games. That is so not true. You know, like we actually teach kids so much about being like in community when they have other cheerleaders. Like who are their other cheerleaders? And that's definitely a thought change that comes with shadow work. How can we cast a new future here? And that's what I experienced too. You know, like how do I set my kids up for community that supports them when I can't be there because I work full time? So I can cast a different future for them and myself, because me living in guilt doesn't serve them either. All right, let's see here. So how do we know it's shadow though? Because sometimes things happen where, you know, somebody really is to blame or something terrible like really does happen, right? Like somebody does something terrible to us. You know, there are times when somebody really is to blame for something or somebody really did something terrible to us that caused us pain and suffering. And in those moments, you know, we want to like feel the pain, let the grief roll through you, whatever that experience is. It's not to say to just ignore it and like love and light it away and just be neutral about it. No, that's not shadow work. That is something that has happened and grief, and we're feeling the pain. The shadow part of that comes when it continues to impact something down the road. So if you had like a terrible experience, you went through the grief of it, and then it's 3 years later and you are still like it's still showing up for you in some way, that's when you're doing the shadow work and saying, this is that story of that thing that happened, that's not happening right now, and I'm going to create a different future, right? So we know it's shadow though when our internal peace is disrupted. When our nervous system is dysregulated and we just can't stop thinking about it. Like that is when we're in a place of shadow, when we're completely just like not present. We're not in the moment. We're hyper focused on whatever it is that's bugging us, these feelings, and just totally dysregulated, inner peace disrupted, right? That is when we know that we're in a place of shadow. And one of the things that I invite people to look at is like, I like to say your poker tell. So when people are playing poker, I guess I don't play poker, but my husband tells me when you're playing poker and you can tell that someone got like a hand or something because something about them shifts. So when something about you changes or like your flashing light moment, like how is it that you know you're in a place of shadow? For me, it's when I raise my voice and like demand to be heard. Like I will be right. You will hear me. I'm raising my voice over yours. Then in those times, I am definitely in my shadow self because I'm not wanting to hear any way about it. And I'm really being fueled by emotion. So that is mine. Like that's a pretty clear indicator to me that I have entered a shadow place when I am getting loud, defensive, and wanting to be heard. That is how I know that I am in a shadow place. So think for a second, like what is your tell? In the past, I've heard from people that they like slam a door, they disengage. Some people get more quiet, not more loud. But how do you know that you're in a place of shadow? And I'm going to look through some of the comments here. Yeah, guilt, saying no to my oldest sister. And I love seeing the shares because I know what opportunity there is, because myself, Anna, other members of Team TSC, like we have lived so many of these shares that you're sharing. And that's how we know what we do here works, because we've lived them and like we keep doing the shadow work. And we also know what it's like to be on the other side of it. So you can get on the other side of it. Let's see here. Yeah, Lisa, just guilt, not enough time for everybody. Yeah, you're not alone in that. Housework not being done, the old work first, play later story from childhood coming up. And two, like everything else we teach here, considering, you know, how do you want to feel? And then asking, what are the stories in your life, the shadow stuff in your life that's not allowing you to feel that way? Because a lot of these old stories are the things that keep you from feeling the way you want to feel. Let's see here. So many. I see the comments piling up here. Do the process, trust it, quiet, tightness. Yeah, so many. Casey had a big aha moment, root cause of my reactions in certain situations. Let's see. Catherine said to feel this guilt. You taught me there's another way. Do now go visit monthly, try to take care of all I can while I'm there. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. All right, just scrolling through. Yeah, Kim says, yes, shut down. Kathy says, depends on the situation. Yeah, for everybody, it's different. And Cynthia, I love this share. Mine is shame, not being able to lose weight and staying consistent and exercising. And these are like, and I know I also want to acknowledge how frustrating it can be to have somebody just say things like, these are thoughts. You're like, if these are just damn thoughts, wouldn't it be easier to stop thinking them? And it's not that easy. Like, it's just not that easy. I sit here telling you that this works after, I have been doing 1, personal development, 2, spiritual metaphysical work for over 20 years, And I've been teaching the Sisters Enchanted and the things we teach here for 7 years. And it was about early 20. So it's been 2 years now or so that the 5-eye spiral came to my mind. And in these last 2 years, since that was born, I can tell you hand to heart that Girl Scout honor, what is that we do? That I have become the most calm, regulated person I have ever been. And it's not overnight though. So I know I just want to acknowledge that, how frustrating it can be to be like, Sara, this is so hard though. I feel guilty. I feel resentment. I feel this stuff, right? And I know I've been there. I've been on my kitchen floor crying hysterically, wondering how it was that I'm going to get the work done, feed a kid, and mop that freaking dirty floor because my tears are making all the dirt come up. I have been there. I have been there when a family member has knocked on my door in some kind of state, needing a place to stay, and I've had to turn them away. I've been there. I've been there with no money in the bank. I have been there. And I can say that it really does come down to seeing what is true and what is not. And the things we teach here work. That's all I can say about it. It might not happen right at this moment, but stick to it. And they do work. They do work. Anna's sharing, this is a true statement. Yeah. Let's see here. Deirdre sharing, growing up financially insecure and feeling like I will never be okay, even when the bills are paid, feeling guilty spending. Yeah, that's very true. Or the flip side to that, I grew up financially insecure, got money at a first job when I was in my early 20s, and put myself in tens of thousands of credit card debt because I had money for the first time and was like, oh, I'm gonna spend it, and had to learn the lessons that way. It shows up different for everybody. But it's definitely, it's all possible. All right. So in our 5-eye spiral, which I keep talking about, that's what we teach. We talked yesterday a bit about intention in our first open house workshop. If you missed that, you want to replay. That's that top moon. The bottom moon here is actually shadow work. That's our insight part. And it's part of the framework where we start to ask ourselves, why don't we feel the way we want to feel? Why aren't we achieving what we want to achieve? Why doesn't life look the way that I want to look? And we do shadow work to start to investigate it. And as I was saying, it might be really frustrating to hear me be like, oh, it's all possible. And I never want to come off as a person who's just love and light your way through the situation, because it's damn hard. And I know it's hard because it was hard for me. It was so hard. If anyone's ever heard the story of me and the kitchen magnets, you know how hard it is. I won't tell that story right now, but it's a good story. And it involved me losing my mind, and it involved kitchen magnets being hurtled across the room. Kitchen fridge magnets, I mean. So why can't we all just do this shadow work effectively all the time and just make everything better? Because these stories run deep. The stories run so deep, and there's so many of them that it's can feel like whack-a-mole. You get one and then there's another one. You get one and then there's another one, which is why we've got to keep doing it, which is why I love our 5-eye spiral, because it's a rhythm that invites you to keep doing it. We aren't surrounded by other people doing it. I mentioned a story about my dad and resentment, and my dad's not doing shadow work. My siblings, well, Anna is, but the rest of my siblings aren't doing shadow work. And, I got there's 7 of us. There's me and Anna and 5 others between step siblings and half siblings. And Anna and I are the only ones doing this. So when you put yourself into a situation where you've done the shadow work, but the other people haven't, it can be really challenging. It's like saying, like, you learn to swim, but now you're in the middle of the ocean. It's not that easy, right? So we're not surrounded by other people doing it, which is why you got to put yourself in community with other people doing it. And we just aren't wired to do it in a vacuum. Like, we're not wired to be constantly doing shadow work, which is also why we teach the rhythm that we teach, because you do the shadow work. And then the next part of the rhythm is creative dreaming. It's thinking like, well, what's a new way forward? How can I reimagine the situation for next month or the next time I'm in it? And we really release like these bits of, the hardness that comes with it, the hardness that comes with it. No, I can't say that word, but that is why it's so challenging to do shadow work. All right. So if you have questions about this, definitely leave them here, put them in the chat. I can keep answering questions, but that's how you do shadow work. That's what it is. That's how you do it. What it is and how we teach it, this intersection of the denied parts of yourself and your story, and then what you're doing with your time that really just keeps you from looking at that. It keeps you in avoidance of doing the work of looking at that story and moving on. And we all have those things, whether it's overworking, over cleaning, overspending, over shopping, overeating, over whatever. We're doing over scrolling social media, playing a little too much Candy Crush, whatever your thing is. We are doing things or putting ourselves in positions where maybe we're over volunteering. We're driving an hour to work. We are, I don't know, taking all of our neighbors' garbage out to the curb for some reason, like just filling our time with jobs that we don't get paid to do, that keep us from actually doing the work of figuring out how we want to feel, why we don't feel that way, so that we can create the future that we do desire to live. And if you're here and you're like, this doesn't apply to me, my life feels really great. This applies to everybody. And there can always be, you can always expand, and you can always expand that good feeling. The better you feel, the more expansion that you are bringing to this world, the more people, just by being you in a happy, fulfilled, peaceful, relaxed state, your life can change other people. When you show up peaceful, relaxed, feeling abundant and joyful, and there's somebody in the grocery line who's having a terrible day, they just yelled at the cashier, now that cashier feels bad, and you in your most abundant, expansive self come up there and say, hey, you're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. It's a tough job you got there, talking to all these people. You just changed somebody's life because you are regulated, you are in an expansive state, and you are feeling joy, peaceful, abundant, all of those things, and more intentional, more intuitive, and feel like life is full of everyday magic. And when you are in that way, just by being you, you make the world a better place. So it really is a big expansive project that we are all on, right? A big expansive project. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this today. I know how precious and important your time is, and it is my objective to be intentional with your time so you can create the life you desire to be living, that is riddled with everyday magic and so much intuition and joy and abundance and relaxation and all of that jazz. If you enjoyed this session, you're going to love Holistic Witchery. Doors are open. Registration's open, brand new, fully revamped curriculum, and we can't wait to get it into your hot little hands. So you can find more information at holisticwitchery.com. We look forward to welcome you into the program. Let us know if you have any questions anywhere in email, social media. We got your back. But definitely consider joining us and keep doing your shadow work. It pays off. I promise you that. All right, y'all. Until next time, I hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. Holistic Witchery is a coming home to yourself. Holistic Witchery is an online course. Holistic Witchery is a community, and Holistic Witchery is life-changing. A little bit of personal development and a very heavy dash of magic makes this course different than anything else you will find out there. Our community is top-notch. Our support is top-notch. And what you will learn about yourself along the way will surprise even you. When we think about the community members who participated in Holistic Witchery, we are proud to say that the aha moments, the feedback, the deep change, the life awareness that comes, the self-awareness, the soul alignment that comes from participating in Holistic Witchery is absolutely awe-inspiring. What you'll have are pre-recorded videos. You'll have live video support in the form of group gatherings. You will have printables and worksheets and prompts, and you will have a whole community of magic makers just like you to walk alongside you on this journey. There is not one right person that Holistic Witchery is for. Holistic Witchery is for you if you're a stay-at-home mom. It's for you if you're retired. It's for you if you are a person who works 3 jobs and is burning the candle at both ends. It's particularly for you if that's the case. Holistic Witchery is for you if you love the word witch and if it makes you shiver a little and you're not quite sure what to make of it. Holistic Witchery is for everybody. And there is something here that every single person can learn and grow from. And we can't wait to see which little bit of Holistic Witchery is that thing for you. Welcome home, Magic Maker.
Thank you to everyone. Sisters Enchanted has changed my life inside and out.
And I just wanted to be here to be here for everyone else and support them, and I don't know, just sharing there in the celebration. That's all.
I was like, well, you want to tell them how I've changed since this? But yeah, no, just thank you guys so much. I'm still a jumbled mess, but I think I'm a little less of a jumbled mess since I started this. And it's really cool to see that I have more potential than I thought I did. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you
So much.
Now we have a home. At least that's what I feel. So again, I just wanted to tag on to that one that a lot of us don't have a lot of friends and we're doing our own thing. And like I said, I don't care what the rest of the world thinks. I got friends here. So thank you guys again. I love you all.
I think each person comes here and takes away something with them. And for some people, it's more of the mindset stuff. For some people, it's more of like soul, goddessy, priestessy, like good juicy stuff. For some people, it's learning tarot and astrology, and they feel like it's very different. But I think it's very interesting to me how it's one thing, and to each person, it's something entirely different.